Do you know how powerful the Bodhi Ancient Tree is? It can actually turn 5 half-Dou Sheng strongmen into puppets. Picking up from the last chapter, Xiao and his companions encountered a beast tide on their way to the Bodhi Ancient Tree. In the sky, Hanyu glanced at Xiao and the others unnoticeably, then looked at the sparse figures in the square below, and didn't pay them any further attention. With a loud laugh, he took the lead and flew towards the northern horizon, followed by a large, dark crowd that caused a loud rumble as they swiftly followed. Xiao and his group were also mixed in this large troop. They did not approach the front to be the first to stick their heads out. The faster the power is consumed at the beginning, the sooner it will die. The dark crowd, like a cloud, flashed across the sky like lightning, covering 100 miles in less than 10 minutes. When the large troop flew over a lush mountain peak, a boundless black plain appeared in everyone's sight. Xiao gaze, through the layers of people, looked at the black plain, and he couldn't help but take a sharp breath. On the endless plain, the black clouds were dense, and on the ground, one fierce beast after another filled the eyes, densely packed like a sea of blood, spreading to the end of sight, filled with the sound of violent roars and angry roars, like thunder, echoing endlessly in this world. Xiao couldn't help but murmur, "So this is the beast tide of the ancient wild domain. It is indeed terrifying." No wonder Sooner said that even with so many strong people gathered together, they couldn't break through. It turns out that compared to the beast tide, they are just a drop in the ocean. Xiao gaze crossed the endless beast tide, and then looked at the distant dark area. The clear voice of the soul jade sounded again, "Everyone, the beast tide is ahead, and now is the best time to attack. Since the alliance was initiated by me, then the most dangerous team tip will be temporarily taken over by my people. However, when they are exhausted, they will have to retreat and be replaced." Hearing that he had taken over the most dangerous place, many others secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Xiao shook his head and smiled at the soul jade's words. "This guy, is he so kind-hearted? He knows the soul hall too well. People who come from such a place, can they be so selfless?" It's a big joke. On the face of the soul jade, there is still a warm smile. "Everyone, get ready to go." His gaze slowly swept through the large troop, and finally stopped on Xiao, Sooner and others, and then suddenly turned around and moved forward, with more than a dozen figures in black robes following closely behind, and then behind them, there were many strong people. They followed closely behind the soul jade and others, and the dou qi in their bodies slowly filled their bodies. Xiao and a large group of people also slowly rose into the air, not too much in front, staying in a central position, where the pressure was relatively small. In the sky, the dark crowd formed an arrow-shaped formation, and at the forefront of that formation, it was a group of soul jade people. If this team really wanted to erupt, the explosive power was undoubtedly extremely terrifying. Seeing the formation take shape, the soul jade in front of him waved his hand, and his figure took the lead, causing a shrill sound of breaking the wind, and rushed towards the nearby beast tide. And with his action, the dark arrow-shaped formation team behind him also followed closely, and the sound of breaking the wind was full of the sky. Such a big show. When it was 1,000 feet away from the beast tide, it was noticed by many fierce beasts, and at the moment, it was full of violent roars like a thunderstorm, and finally spread far and wide, causing more and more roars. 1,000 feet away, it was a blink of an eye, and the terrifying dou qi surged from the body of the soul jade in front, and finally swept out, and the fierce beasts within 100 feet were almost all shaken into blood pulp in an instant, and at the same time, this huge team also rushed into the beast tide. The team burst out an amazing impact at the moment of contact with the beast tide, and a strong dou qi gushed out, and the fierce beasts around 100 feet were almost all shaken to death in chunks, and the fierce beasts' dying roars echoed endlessly in this world. Xiao and a large group of people were in the middle of the team, occasionally throwing out a few dou qi to shake the beasts that were close to death, and at the same time, their gaze was constantly scanning around. The fierce beasts on the periphery of the beast tide were not strong, so they could advance like a withered tree, but the more they went deep into the beast tide, the more they would be blocked by this unbridled advance. And the fact is just as Xiao and others expected. when this team broke a huge gap in the beast tide and rushed into nearly 1,000 feet. The pressure around them suddenly increased sharply, and some fierce beasts with strong strength were able to rush to the team's vicinity, and the smell of blood made many people's faces a bit heavy. Sooner casually threw out a whip and shook two fierce beasts that were rushing towards them to death, and there was a trace of heaviness on her face, saying, "Now here you can occasionally see fierce beasts of the Dou Zone level, and if you go further inside, there will be fierce beasts of the Dou Zun level, and then it will be a real bare-handed fight. Everyone be more careful, don't get entangled. Once you fall into the beast tide, you will die without a doubt." Xiao Yin also nodded slightly, and now they have gradually penetrated into the beast tide, in front, behind, left, right, and even in the sky of them. There are countless fierce beasts. They have no way to retreat now, only to continue to rush forward until they really break through the beast tide. Taking advantage of the gap, Xiao Yin glanced at the front of the team and found that the Soul Jade and others seemed to be attacking the fierce beasts in front very hard. Rows of fierce beasts fell to the ground in their hands, and the team was led deeper and deeper. At this time, it seems that many people are gradually believing that the Soul Jade is really working hard for this team. If you can overlook this plane from the sky at the moment, you can clearly see that there are more and more fierce beasts around the team, coming in droves, densely packed like ants. With the increasingly difficult situation, even in the end, even if many strong people attack together, they can't kill some fierce beasts quickly, and the bloody bare-handed fight finally started. When the Soul Jade and others at the front of the team fought close to the beast tide, everyone in the team clearly felt that the speed immediately stopped, and under this stagnation, the fierce beasts on the left, right, and back three sides quickly caught up, and then the brutal battle suddenly broke out. All kinds of fierce beasts, with blood-red eyes, madly rushed towards the team. Although most of the fierce beasts were killed by some strong people working together, there were also some particularly strong fierce beasts who rushed close to the team, and as a result, the team finally began to suffer casualties, and the shrill screams also came continuously from all directions. Faced with such a huge pressure, most people's faces were a bit pale, and they shouted, "Hurry up and go." At this time, Xiao Yan's gaze swept forward again and found that the Soul Jade and those strong people from the Soul Hall had all disappeared. In the front of the team at the moment was a group of strong people who were pushed out by the team behind, and they couldn't retreat, they could only rush forward. Faced with the fierce beasts in front, they could only desperately launch an offensive, but every time they killed some fierce beasts, they would be exhausted by the endless beast tide, and when they wanted to retreat, they suddenly found that under the siege of the beast tide, many people were red-eyed and desperately wanted to push forward, so they had no chance to retreat. With no chance to retreat, coupled with the exhaustion of Dou Qi, before they were desperate, they were fiercely bitten by the fierce beasts that rushed up. Therefore, as the team went deeper and deeper, the number of people in the team was getting less and less, and many people were losing their minds in this situation, which led to the team's loss of control, and only a few people could maintain their rationality and try to maintain their speed, so as not to be pushed to the front by the flow of people, and Xiao Yin and others belonged to this category. Looking at the rapidly shrinking team, Xiao Yin and others' faces were also filled with gravity. Even some people who reached the level of 6 or 7-star Dou Zun, in this endless siege, were gradually exhausted, and finally were thrown into the fierce beast group, and in the blink of an eye, they were torn into pieces and swallowed into the belly of the fierce beast. Xiao Yan's gaze swept through the team, and finally found the figures of the Soul Jade and others in the back of the team. These guys really didn't have a good heart. While Xiao Yin was looking around, Sooner's voice suddenly came into his ears, saying, "Brother Xiao Yin, this team is about to be completely broken, and when the Soul Jade and others take the lead, we will follow, and the road behind is up to us." Xiao Yin nodded slightly and slowly took a breath. He looked at the fierce beasts and the bodies of humans along the way, these people, who exhausted their strength, but the result was to make a free wedding dress for others. They were all used by the Soul Jade for free. In front of a group of people who were intercepted by a fierce beast with obvious strength, the Soul Jade and others leaped over the crowd like lightning, and finally passed the giant beast. Seeing that the Soul Jade finally abandoned everyone and left alone, Xiao Yin also snorted coldly, waved his hand, and took the lead in rushing out, and behind him, Sooner and others quickly followed. When Xiao Yin and others started, there were several waves of people in the team who also rushed up at the same time. Obviously, these guys had long understood the conspiracy of the Soul Jade, but they also wanted to use the strength of others to get here. With the departure of these people, the remaining hundreds of people were suddenly pounced on by the fierce beasts that suddenly surged around, and the shrill screams resounded in this sky. Xiao Yin and others rushed through the air, and a few hundred feet in front of them, it was a group of people from the Soul Jade, who had not consumed too much Dou Qi from the beginning, coupled with their own strength, which was not weak. When those guys were driven crazy by the fierce beasts, they had already rested, and their state was naturally very good. Xiao Yin glanced at the Soul Jade and others in front, and then looked back, not far behind them. It was a group of people from the Heavenly Demon Phoenix clan, and the man with the colorful pupils named Jufeng was the first. Behind him, many strong people from the Heavenly Demon Phoenix clan tightly protected him, and among these people, Xiao Yin saw Feng Qinger again. She woke up at the moment. Although the scarlet palm print on her cheek still exists, but at least she saved her life. When Xiao Yin was looking at a group of people from the Heavenly Demon Phoenix clan, Feng Qinger also raised her head, and her gaze met Xiao Yan's, and her silver teeth suddenly bit hard, but this time, she was much more restrained, and did not dare to openly express her hatred. The slap from Xiao Yin before really made her sober up a lot. As for Feng Qinger, Xiao Yin didn't care much. Although this woman's strength has soared, but her future achievements are limited, and it is not a big problem. Xiao Yan's gaze crossed a group of people from the Heavenly Demon Phoenix clan, and then looked further back. There were several groups of people following up. These guys all have a good strength, and looking at this appearance, it is obviously quite familiar with the beast tide here. So their strength is also quite intact, and they have not consumed too much Dou Qi in the previous advancement. Xiao Yin looked up and said, "Now we are still in the beast tide. I don't know if we will encounter stronger fierce beasts later on." At the far end, the scarlet beast tide seems to have become much sparser, and there may be the end of the beast tide, but I don't know if there will be some extremely difficult fierce beasts to deal with. Along the way, although there are many fierce beasts, the strongest fierce beast Xiao Yin and others have met is just the appearance of a 5-star Dou Zun, and they have not seen a stronger one. While Xiao Yin was pondering in his heart, the roar full of violence also resounded around again, and then he felt that the surrounding space seemed to have a bit more pressure, and he said to himself, "Those guys behind have been solved?" Xiao Yin was silent. There were at least dozens of Dou Zun strong people in it, but this number is basically not worth mentioning in the beast tide. Even if they resist fiercely, it is just a mantis blocking a car, and it is just a matter of time before they die completely. But what made Xiao Yan's heart sink a bit was that even so many people only persisted for such a short time. Xiao Yin took a light breath, leaped forward, and appeared at the forefront of the team, and then said in a deep voice, "Everyone, be careful. Keep the previous formation. Brother Qingyang, you and I will open the road in front." Now the situation. Once the attention of those fierce beasts is taken back from those guys behind, their pressure will suddenly increase, so they must start to speed up. Gu Qingyang also understood the current situation, nodded, moved, and appeared next to Xiao Yin, and the rest of the people were arranged in a triangular formation. The weakest people were surrounded in the middle, and the rest took turns, so that they could have a lasting push. Xiao Yan's gaze swept slightly and saw the scarlet eyes full of eyes and heavy breathing. A cold drink, the speed suddenly increased. The hot, strange fire surged out of his body, and then in a dragon's roar, he shook hundreds of fierce beasts that came with the steps of the earth and mountains to death. When Xiao Yin made a move, Gu Qingyang also waved out hundreds of palm prints in a flash, and the palm prints roared out, directly clearing all the fierce beasts around. At the same time, Sooner, Kailin, Yuewen, Little Fairy Doctor and others behind also took action without saying a word, and the vast Dou Qi spread out, clearing all the fierce beasts within 100 meters. Soul Jade is gone. Sooner's beautiful eyes swept over the front and suddenly said, "They have broken through." Gu Qingyang was surprised and said. Xiao Yan's eyes also flashed a touch of surprise, and then a touch of joy appeared on his face. The beast tide is finally coming to an end. When everyone was relieved, Xiao Yin turned his gaze to the depths and saw that about thousands of feet away, An ancient tree with a very large shade was standing alone in the vast plain, and a clear air was rippling in the air above the ancient tree, sometimes changing into various shapes, showing a magical and unpredictable. Looking at the ancient tree filled with an ancient taste, standing between heaven and earth from a distance, Xiao Yan's heart also beat violently. This is the legendary Bodhi Ancient Tree? When Xiao Yan was stunned by the huge ancient tree in the distance, Sooner and others also found it, and a cry of amazement came out of their mouths. Such things in the legend, even if they are ancient races, they have never seen them, and they can only occasionally see them in some ancient books. Little fairy doctor murmured, "What a big tree." Even though they were far away from the Bodhi Ancient Tree, they could still feel the vastness of the Bodhi Ancient Tree. The shade of the tree spread all over the sky, like an ancient sacred object standing between heaven and earth, filled with ancient and vicissitudes. Xiao Yan said, "I'm afraid the people of the Soul Clan have passed. Let's hurry up." Then he restrained the heat in his heart, waved his hand, and took the lead to rush towards the distant ancient tree, and behind him, Sooner and others couldn't help but rest, and hurriedly displayed their figures to keep up. When Xiao Yan and others started, the strong people of the heavenly demon Phoenix clan also hurriedly chased after Xiao Yan and others in front. Xiao Yan and others were very fast, and the distance of thousands of feet was only a few minutes away. And when Xiao Yan and others arrived hundreds of feet away from the Bodhi Ancient Tree, a group of figures suddenly appeared in the field of vision. Soul Jade? Seeing the group of people who stopped and did not move forward, Xiao Yan and others were also stunned. And these guys actually waited for them honestly here? Xiao Yan whispered, "Be careful," and gradually slowed down, slowly landing not far behind the Soul Jade, and then raised his gaze to look at the Bodhi Ancient Tree not far away. Watching the Bodhi Ancient Tree up close is undoubtedly another shocking spectacle, with a huge trunk of thousands of feet, like a pillar connecting heaven and earth, and on the trunk, it is full of ancient atmosphere. The shade of the Bodhi Ancient Tree is extremely large, spreading out. It can cover a small half of a city, and a strong clear air is rippling from the Bodhi Ancient Tree, rippling in the sky, making the sky change from time to time various magical images. Xiao Yan looked thoughtful and said, "The Bodhi Ancient Tree, such a treasure of heaven and earth, is enough to rank in the top 3 of the continent of Dou Qi. If it is said that there is no danger, it is probably impossible. In addition, if this ancient tree has really survived for countless years, it should have given birth to its own wisdom. If the Bodhi Ancient Tree can also give birth to wisdom and cultivate, it will undoubtedly be one of the most terrifying creatures on the continent of Dou Qi. With the people here, I'm afraid it's not enough for others to have a meal." While Xiao Yan and others were pondering, the sound of breaking wind also followed, and then the heavenly demon Phoenix clan and several other teams quickly arrived, and finally looked at Xiao Yan and the Soul Jade and others with some doubts, and slowly landed. Xiao Yan glanced at Jiufeng and did not reply, and the Soul Jade in front turned around, and the originally wrinkled eyebrows were also stretched open, and he said with a smile, "Hee, everyone has finally arrived. Since everyone's goal is the Bodhi Ancient Tree, it is natural to wait together." All the people present laughed, and those who could come here are not people who save oil on the lamp, and the Soul Jade set has long been seen through by them. This guy is kind on the surface, but he is extremely vicious in his heart. Those who believe in his words have all been left in the beast tide, and have been turned into minced meat and swallowed into the belly of the fierce beast. In response to the people's mirthless smiles, the Soul Jade didn't care, and his face still hung a bit of a smile, pointing to the Bodhi Ancient Tree behind, saying, "This is our goal, but although we have broken through the beast tide, the most difficult thing to deal with is still the Bodhi Ancient Tree." Hearing his words, everyone's hearts moved, and their gazes also stopped on the face of the Soul Jade. The Soul Jade smiled and said, "In a volume of ancient books in our Soul Clan, it was recorded that a forefather of our clan also met the Bodhi Ancient Tree, but in the end, he lost contact. When the strong people of our clan received the message and went to save him, he and the Bodhi Ancient Tree had completely disappeared. Although I don't know what happened to that forefather, it can be affirmed that he has mostly fallen, and I'm afraid he fell in the hands of the Bodhi Ancient Tree. The strength of this forefather was also at the level of half a sage at that time." Xiao Yan and others' faces changed slightly, and even the strong people at the level of half a sage were inexplicably missing because of the Bodhi Ancient Tree? The Soul Jade said slowly, "So, everyone should not underestimate the Bodhi Ancient Tree. The most dangerous thing on this trip is it." Gu Qingyang glanced at the Soul Jade and said, "You are waiting here. You dare not go up alone?" The Soul Jade smiled and did not deny it. He turned around and slowly walked towards the huge Bodhi Ancient Tree. Now that everyone has arrived, you can try to see what kind of strange place the Bodhi Ancient Tree has. As for other people, under the temptation of the Bodhi Ancient Tree, the Soul Jade is not worried that they will not follow. Xiao Yan's gaze swept over the back of the Soul Jade and the distant Bodhi Ancient Tree, and he said softly, "Be careful." Then he also raised his foot and followed. No matter whether what the Soul Jade said is true or false, they have worked hard to get here, and it is impossible to give up easily. Everyone nodded and followed behind Xiao Yan, and the Douqi in their bodies also started to run quietly. Behind Xiao Yan, Jufeng and several other teams hesitated for a while, and then followed. Their thoughts were the same as Xiao Yan and others. After spending so much effort, they finally broke through here. If they give up, I'm afraid anyone would be extremely unwilling. On the vast grassland, several groups of people are spaced apart from each other, going to the towering ancient tree not far away at the same speed. As they get closer and closer to the Bodhi Ancient Tree, Qing Lin suddenly said with a heavy face, "Young Master Xiao Yan, there is something wrong with this Bodhi Ancient Tree. There is a kind of cold gray air hidden in the seemingly vigorous clear air, which has many negative emotions similar to human beings." Xiao Yan's footsteps suddenly stopped, his eyes narrowed, and he naturally couldn't sense such things. But Qing Lin has the azure serpent triflower pupil, and his eyesight is naturally a bit strange. So he didn't doubt her words, and he could also feel that the closer he got to the Bodhi Ancient Tree, the clearer the feeling of unease became. When Xiao Yan's heart was on high alert, the Soul Jade and others in front suddenly stopped again. Here is quite close to the Bodhi Ancient Tree, and the shade of the tree covers them. When they came here, Xiao Yan and others gradually felt a very subtle chill, as if it was slowly melting into their bones. Looking up, Xiao Yan's gaze was fixed on the huge Bodhi Ancient Tree. At a distance of about 100 feet from the tree trunk, there was a bright light, which was like a huge energy heart, and from time to time, it burst out with a powerful heartbeat. A group of gazes gathered on the light hidden in the huge tree body, and everyone's heart beat fiercely at the moment. Someone said, "It's the Bodhi heart." When the 3 words of Bodhi heart were uttered by some people, the Bodhi Ancient Tree that stood quietly on the grassland suddenly made a subtle sound, and then everyone saw the dense branches entwined together, hanging down from the shade of the tree. When these branches touched the ground, they slowly split open, and 5 figures with no expression slowly stepped out from it. With the emergence of these 5 figures, the space in this world suddenly fluctuated violently, and a terrible pressure suddenly filled the air. Feeling this kind of pressure, everyone present's faces became extremely ugly, because they found that these 5 figures were all half-sage strong people. Xiao Yan took a deep breath and suppressed the shock in his heart. His gaze suddenly swept over the 5 figures and said, "There is no vitality in them." Sooner, who was on the side, also said softly, "These 5 half-sage strong people are just puppets, and there is no existence of the soul." The Soul Jade and others also looked ugly because of this scene, especially when their gaze swept around and finally stopped on a figure in a black robe. Isn't this the half-sage ancestor recorded in the ancient books of the clan? Hearing the exclamation of the Soul Jade, the faces of others also inevitably trembled. "What should we do now?" Gu Qingyang said with a heavy face. A lineup of 5 half-sage strong people, they are afraid that they can't deal with it together. Xiao Yan also frowned tightly, then looked at the lineup on his side and said, "We should be able to entangle with a half-sage strong person. However, there is more than one half-sage here, but a full 5. Then Xiao Yan suddenly turned his head and said to everyone, "Is there anyone who still plans to retreat at the moment? It seems that as long as we don't move forward, these half-sage puppets won't make a move. That is to say, if we retreat now, there is still a chance." When hearing Xiao Yan's words, everyone present frowned slightly. Since no one retreated, they could only fight hard. Xiao Yan said, "There are still 7 teams here. and our group can block one half-sage, and the other 4 are distributed by you. How about that? After Xiao Yan's words fell, the soul jade on the side looked at him and said, we can block one. The Jufeng of the Heavenly Demon Phoenix clan hesitated for a moment and said, let us take care of one. Although these strong people are terrifying, they are just puppets, not as good as the real half-sage strong people. They should be able to fight together. Xiao Yan's gaze turned to the remaining 4 teams and said, how about the remaining 2 half-sage strong people? How about you distribute them among the 4 teams? Hearing this, the 4 teams looked at each other, then looked at the location of the Bodhi heart, and finally nodded fiercely. Since everyone has no problem, let's do it. With Xiao Yan's last word, he slowly took 3 steps forward, and at the same time, the Dou Qi in his body also surged out. When the 3rd step landed, the 5 puppets that were as still as sculptures suddenly turned to him, and one of them took a strange step and appeared in front of him in a flash, directly waving a palm to Xiao Yan. And when the puppet's attack fell, a dozen strong Dou Qi suddenly flew from behind Xiao Yan, and finally hit the puppet fiercely. Start. Seeing that Xiao Yan has started to fight with a puppet, the Soul Jade and others also dared not to be slow, and they shouted coldly and rushed up quickly. In Xiao Yan's battle circle, after the half-sage puppet was severely hit by many powerful attacks, his head gradually appeared many cracks, and after a while, it exploded, and his raised palm suddenly stopped, and a strange fluctuation spread out from it, and finally the whole body turned into powder and floated down. Xiao Yan wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the situation in the team. Except for him and Sooner, everyone else was injured. This guy is really tough. Xiao Yan flicked his finger, and a pill flew out of the ring and finally floated in front of everyone and smoothly entered their mouths. Brother Xiao Yan, do we need to help? Sooner walked to Xiao Yan's side, looked at the other battle circles, and asked softly. At this time, apart from them, the other battle circles were not very good. No, we just need to take care of ourselves. Xiao Yan shook his head and said, these people are all competitors. After solving the half-sage puppets, they may make a move on us, so it's better not to meddle. Hearing this, Sooner nodded, and then Xiao Yan looked at the Bodhi Ancient Tree again and murmured, that is the legendary Bodhi heart, right? But this ancient tree is more strange than I imagined. These half-sage puppets were definitely real half-sage strong people before, and even they could become puppets. However, these half-sage puppets are not the most troublesome. The most troublesome is the ancient tree itself, because no one knows what kind of strange means it still has. Xiao Yan stared at the light, and his thoughts were flying in his heart. After about 10 minutes, the other battlefields also ended the battle one after another, and Xiao Yan saw that the people on his side had recovered, and slowly said, the next will be more dangerous than now, so I suggest that people who have not reached the level of 6-star Do Zun stay here.